Brother John by u/dayspring989. So about 4 years ago, my girlfriend, now wife, and I were having coffee outside of a Starbucks when a homeless man walked by us and was saying horrible things. It honestly sounded like he was possessed by a demon. Dude was talking about ritual sacrifice and stuff like that. Then, he just started vomiting everywhere. I thought, damn, dude is high out of his mind and probably has severe mental illnesses. So, a couple weeks later, I started working at that Starbucks. During my breaks, I got to know the homeless man who told me to call him Brother John. I'd give him cigarettes and food and try to talk to him. Some days, he was more coherent. In other days, he would freak out if I said anything to him. I figured he had some kind of psychosis or something similar. I remember most of our conversations as they were very significant to me at that time. Anyways, I left that job after a year or so. And this is where the glitch comes in. The guy just starts appearing everywhere I am. He lives behind a dumpster at a pet supermarket near my apartment, and I've been there with him. Obviously, he has no relationships with people because he can't really remember who people are. Many times I talked to him, and he introduced himself again. "Call me Brother John." Even when I would start the conversation off with, "Hey, Brother John." So, I left the job at Starbucks and figured that I wouldn't see John much anymore. Imagine my surprise when I am an hour away from my apartment at a park and boom, John is sitting on a bench babbling. For some reason, it felt completely normal. He probably took the bus down here for whatever reason. And I tried to say hello, but got no response. A month later, I'm driving to my mom's house. My mom lives 45 minutes in the opposite direction of this park. Once I'm a couple minutes away from my mom's house, I see Brother John sitting on the curb in front of a used tire shop. Again, this seems completely normal to me for some reason. Another month or so passes, and I'm at church. My church is about 30 minutes in a different direction than both of the previous locations. And Brother John is having coffee at church, his clothes covered in bodily fluids. And again, I thought it was normal. Someone that goes to the same church decided to help him out a bit and bring him here. My church is tiny and has about 130 members. Maybe he took the bus, and either way, it's normal to me. This happened about 9 more times over the years. He was outside Barnes & Nobles, at the beach, at my college, outside of a soccer field I drove by, outside a Chinese restaurant, and many more. The thing that's got me fucked up is I never questioned it, even though these locations are massively far apart from each other. Some are around 90 minutes and in different countries. Most recently, he showed up at my job past the gated entrance. The gate is unlocked and anyone can open it, but it's out of the way. He talked to me like he remembered me and kept saying, "I belong here." And I replied in a calm way, but have to have him leave as it's private property. He stomped off angrily saying, "I belong here." I haven't seen him since. The most reasonable explanation is that he just rides the bus everywhere. However, I've seen him at late hours of the night, far away from his dumpster camp. More than that, the chances of me running into him this many times is ridiculously low. I have many friends that live in my neighborhood, and I've only run into them in daily life once, if at all. The whole time writing this, I've been getting chills. It may sound like nothing, but I'm genuinely freaked out. Update. I just saw him again 4 hours after making this post. Color appearing seemingly out of nowhere by u/ILoveMaiV8552. It was at the end of a workday, and as I commute by train, I took the local bus down to the train station. I was in a hurry as the bus was late that day, and it was only a few minutes or less before the train departed. Once aboard the train, I sat down to arrange my stuff. I noticed that my right hand was covered in a red color. My immediate thought was that I had cut myself and that the red color was blood. However, I did not feel any pain and was unable to find any wound on the hand. In addition, it did not really resemble blood, but was more like a chemical red dye. I seem to remember it had a slight chemical smell, like marking pens. As it was during the corona pandemic, I always had a bottle of alcohol-based disinfectant with me in my bag. Using this, I managed to get some of the red color off, but it was really hard, like it was some dye from a marking pen. I was bewildered, as I was unable to come up with any explanation as to where the red color came from. I take the same route back from work every single day, and something similar has never happened before. I did look at my clothes and bag to look for any spots of red, but I found none. How could I have accidentally come into contact with something that made my whole hand red without leaving any other mark? There was nothing in my office or the bus that I remember that could have caused anything like this. When I came home, it took quite a long time to wash my hand with soap and to get the rest of the color off, and some residues remained on my hand the next day. The next day, I inspected my office closely to see if a red marking pen, which I do have there, had leaked. But it hadn't. There were no red spots or markings anywhere. The event must have happened on the bus. But how? I almost forgot about this event until today. While I was in the bathroom this morning, I suddenly noticed a bright streak of red on the floor, coming from the big toe on one of my feet. My first thought was that it was blood, and that I had cut my toe or otherwise scratched myself until a drop of blood fell on the floor. However, I felt no pain and found no cut on the toe. Neither did I find any bleeding wound on my body. The underside of the big toe was, however, stained red. I looked thoroughly at the floor, but found no other red stains. When I tried to remove it with toilet paper soaked in water, it was resistant to be removed. Similar to a way a chemical red dye would, but not blood. Typically, blood stains having been in the air some time will form an edge of coagulated blood that is harder to remove than the rest, so that the outline of the blood stain on a hard surface will remain after 1 or 2 wipes. This did not. It eventually left on a larger spot a very faint red color, similar to how a dye spot would do if one tries to remove it. There is nothing in the bathroom or vicinity that is a red-colored liquid. In both cases, the red dye, if that's what it is, seems to have come from nowhere. While there may be a trivial explanation, I am utterly unable to see any. Disappearing Bus Girl by ILoveMaiV. In my last couple years of high school, I still rode the bus. I shared a seat with a girl and we got along fine and would usually talk the whole time. One day, and I'll never forget this, we were getting close to my house. My house is in a cul-de-sac, so the bus would let me out and it has to go to the back of the street and turn back around to get out. She mentions having to use the bathroom, and she asked me if she could use mine. I said it was fine, and she asked the bus driver too. It takes a few minutes for the bus to come back out of the dead end, so I figured she could be in and out in time to catch it. We got off the bus, and I distinctly remember her standing at the bottom of my porch. I headed in and asked my mom if she minded someone using our restroom. She said it was okay, so I went back out the door to tell her to come in. But she was gone. I remember seeing the bus go down the road and her waiting at my porch before I went inside. I was inside the house for 5 seconds, and when I got back out, she completely vanished. I remember the bus coming back from the dead end after she vanished, and I have no idea where she went to. In the split second that I go in my house to ask my mom and then back out, she vanished. I looked around and didn't see her. She was standing right by the bottom step when I went in. And I don't think she could have gotten back in the bus in such a short time, because I do remember seeing it drive up the road. Has anyone seen the grid in the sky? By /Adalea. Okay, so this was about 2 years ago, not last summer, but the one before that. Me and my boyfriend, 24 to 25 at that time, went to visit his grandma in the countryside for a few days. One night, probably around 8 p.m., we went in the garden to relax and look at the fireflies that were starting to show up. The sun had set, but the sky was still a pale blue, not really dark yet. Grandma has a bed outside in the garden, used basically as a couch, so we decided to just lay there for a while. At one point, probably just a few minutes later, I noticed very clearly a pale white grid shape in the sky. Wondering what the hell I'm seeing, I start asking my boyfriend, "Do you see?" And he cuts me off and says, "The grid? Yeah." So, it's not like one influenced the other. We both clearly saw it. We joked around that the sky is fake and we are in a matrix and etc. We often have matrixy experiences, so it really wasn't anything shocking. But this has honestly been the cherry on top of everything else. I don't remember thinking of taking a picture. Or maybe we thought that it wouldn't be visible enough, and it's pointless to even try. I'm not really sure, but we just kind of accepted it, and then shrugged it off, had dinner, and went to bed. 2 years later, I have never seen it again, and I've tried. We mention it now and again, like, "Hey, remember the grid?" "Yeah, I haven't seen it either," and etc. I love looking at the sky in general, clouds, shapes, colors, stars, whatever it may be, and yet I still never saw it again, not even a glimpse. I tried to find similar cases online, But for some reason, I only found people on drugs like psychedelics seeing grids and honeycomb shapes in the sky. But as said before, we were very much sober. Every time I remember it, I really don't know what to even think or how to feel. Why haven't I been able to see it again? What could it be? I've been theorizing if it's a force field, or maybe a projection of sorts, and the sky really isn't real, and that was just a glitch. I really don't know, but I hope someone sober has seen it as well, and can maybe shed some light. How Many Eggs? By U/Forston. Typical morning for me is my oldest, who's 13-year-old male, and I get up at 5 a.m. and start chores. At 5:30, I get a shower and get ready for work. He comes in at 5:45, and there's a window from the bathroom to the patio where we store out eggs. Today, at 5:45, I hear him on the patio, so I call out, asking how many eggs he gathered today. He replied, 23 chicken and 8 duck eggs. I go on about my morning routine, and 10 minutes later, he comes in covered in mud. One of the pigs got out, and he lost most of the eggs that he had gathered before he got to the patio because the pig had surprised him. I asked him, what about the one he had already put up? He said he didn't get around to putting up any. I told him that we'd talk when he was on the patio, but he said that he didn't make it to the patio until just now. I checked the security camera to make sure that he wasn't messing with me, and it showed no one on the patio when I had that conversation. He was in the yard wrangling the pig. He was able to salvage 5 chicken eggs and 2 duck eggs, but his count before the incident with the pig was 23 chicken eggs and 8 duck eggs. I Don't Have a Child by U/Drin21. This story happened last year. That afternoon, I was at the airport and ordered a taxi online to take me home. The taxi driver called me, and because the airport was so noisy, I walked to a quiet place so that I could hear his voice well. He picked me up in a car that had 3 rows of seats. I put my suitcase in the second row and sat beside the suitcase, and we chatted the whole drive. In the middle of the chat, he suddenly asked if my son was asleep because his voice was no longer heard. I thought I heard it wrong, so I didn't answer, and we talked about other things. When we arrived, I opened the door and got off with my suitcase and said goodbye to him. He asked me, "Where's your child?" I said that I have no children, and his face went pale. He immediately got down and checked the back seat, and indeed, there was no child there. He panicked and said when he called me that he heard a child's voice chattering faintly. I was alone there, and I walked far enough that the closest person was still very far from me, and there were no children around when he called. Before I got into the car, he saw a small boy getting into the car. But when I was inside, he was confused because he didn't see the boy and thought maybe the boy was lying on his back in the 3rd row so he couldn't see it from the front. Then, when he asked me why the boy didn't speak anymore, because for the first few minutes he sometimes still heard laughter, and because I didn't answer, he thought the boy was asleep. I don't know if he was playing a prank on me or not, but he looked really scared. His hands were cold and shaking. It was a dark and stormy night when I saw someone at my friend's house who was never there. By King Nightingale. This happened 2 nights ago. I went over to a friend's house, and I live in Wisconsin, and for the past few days, we've had a lot of crazy thunderstorms and rain rolling through. And this night was the craziest it got. The roads were flooded, lightning and thunder constantly cracking in the sky. Driving over had me feeling a little bit nervous, and normally, I never feel worried about how I drive in storms, but it was extra windy and pouring rain. Anyway, I make it to my friend's apartment. Let's call him John. And as I get out of my car, there is a deafeningly loud thunder overhead, as if Thor had just landed in the backyard. I approach the door to the apartment, to which my buddy is already standing at the foot of the dark stairwell leading to his apartment. "Our power's out," he tells me. I walk in and go upstairs with him into their apartment. And as I enter the room, it's obviously pretty dark, but not pitch black. It was still 8 p.m. around this time, and some light was creeping in from their balcony sliding door. I made note that Patrick, another coworker who lives with my buddy, was sitting on the couch by this window, along with another silhouette of a person who I assumed was his brother, who had been staying with them for a little while. Both of them turned their heads toward me when I entered, but didn't say anything. I began feeling a nervous panic as I turned to put the beer that I had brought over in the fridge. I, for some reason, felt weird energy in the living room around the corner where Patrick and his brother were sitting. John said something like, "You can go into the living room. You don't have to hang back here." And I turned the corner, greeted Patrick, and was going to greet his brother, until I noticed that the other silhouette I saw was gone. Now it was just Patrick on the couch. I don't let this freak me out, and I wait a good 15 to 30 minutes before saying, "Weren't there 4 of us in here?" To which John and Patrick both said, "No." I then mentioned that I saw Patrick's brother sitting on the couch next to him, to which Patrick explains that his brother left 2 days ago. So, what the hell did I see turn its head to look at me enter? Why was it sitting next to Patrick? Was this just my mind filling in the blanks because I assumed his brother was over, and it was dark enough that my mind put an imaginary person next to Patrick? Does anybody have any theories? Missing piece to a special Kachina doll suddenly reappears in plain sight. By Scrolling My Life Away. My boyfriend and I moved into a new home at the beginning of the pandemic, around April 2020. Upon moving in, all the boxes were placed in the garage, and the only things in the house were the large pieces of furniture, like the sofa, coffee tables, beds, and a piano. The house had a wonderfully lit display case, and I decided to unpack the precious items box so that I could spend the evening placing each delicate item in the display case, then sit and enjoy it with my boyfriend. When I opened the box, I was devastated to see that my mother crow Kachina doll had lost half of her crow feathers. They were made of wood, and she had huge feather pieces that enveloped each side of her head, a right side and a left side. Worse yet, The missing crow feathers from the right side of her head weren't with the packaging, even though I had packed her as a whole piece. I found this supremely odd as I had packed the piece myself, and even if it had broken off during packing and the move, I would have expected to find the broken pieces with the packaging. But I couldn't find it anywhere. I told my boyfriend and we began looking in the box and on the floor for it. After intense searching, we were both completely at a loss to where it could have gone to. We looked all over the house, which was silly because it was completely empty except for our large pieces of furniture, and we found nothing. We checked the box it came in again, and nothing. It was absolutely nowhere to be found. During this time, we were both up and moving around, and neither of us ever found it. After a while, we gave up, sat on the couch, and lamented the loss. It was a gorgeous, authentic Zuni piece, representing the mother of creation. He had given it to me for my birthday, and I cherished it. And we both took it as a bad sign that it had not only broken during the move, but that we couldn't even fix it because we couldn't find the missing piece anywhere. We had some whiskeys, talked about other things, and then went to bed. The next day that we enter the living room, we see the missing feather piece for Mother Crow placed in easy view on top of the armrest of the couch. And somehow, the next morning, it's suddenly just right there and absolutely impossible to miss. Neither one of us could believe it. There was no way it was there that night before, and neither one of us placed it there. The house was virtually empty, so it's not like it would have been hard to find. It seemed to literally appear out of nowhere the next day, and was in such a visible place that there's no way that we would have missed it when looking for it the night before. We talk about the strangeness to this day, and still don't really know what happened or how it got there. Strange Encounter by the River by U/Affectionate Kitchen 8. I live in a small city that's mostly covered in concrete, apart from a couple of patches of nature here and there. In summer of 2015, I've decided to have a picnic by myself. I found a perfect place nearby, and it's a big square of grass by a riverbank that also has a pond with frogs and fish. The meadow is surrounded by the river on one side, a street on the opposite side, and trees separating it from neighboring houses. There are a couple of trees and some bushes right by the river too. I chose a spot almost in the middle of the meadow. I didn't want to be close to the cars, houses, and I didn't want to fall into the overgrown river either. The picnic was going great. I had some music playing. It was very hot, so I took off my shirt to try and catch some breeze. I was located so that the river was to my right side and the road was to my left. After a while, I heard a rustle behind me. I didn't want to find out I was trespassing or bothering someone with my music, and I turned my head around to the left, and it was a 30-something heavy-set man, wearing white shorts and a blue t-shirt with a red and white logo. He was walking about 5 meters behind me, heading towards the river. So he disappeared behind me. I've decided to put my shirt back on in case he comes over to talk to me. I did so, and then I looked back to see where he was. But there was nobody there, other than a yellowish dog heading towards the river. At first, I didn't find it strange. I just got up because I didn't want to risk getting my face bitten by some dog. I started to pack up and noticed there was no man in sight. The nearest trees must have been at least 100 meters away. It was just a big, completely flat meadow. After packing up, I felt a little courageous and slightly approached the place where the dog went. It was trying to pull something large and heavy out of the river. I didn't see what it was because of the bushes, but I could see it struggling to pick it up and hear the heavy sounds the thing was making against the bank. I just went home afterwards, not frightened, but a little intrigued. It's just a little contribution for me. It could have been nothing, a hallucination caused by the hot weather, but I've never experienced anything like that before, or even afterwards. It was so vivid that I can still see the outfit he wore. The Candle and the Box by u/coffee_break37. So, this happened and I don't know what to make of it. My fiancé and I were eating dinner and he was recounting a TED Talk that he watched during a seminar today. As he was speaking, I had the most extreme déjà vu, but it was more than just a feeling. I knew exactly what he was going to say. He was telling the story of how people were presented with a candle and a box of tacks and matches on a table, and told to use these items to light the candle without it dripping on the table. As soon as he said the word candle and a box of tacks, my mind instantly showed me an image of the solution because I remember him telling me the story before, and I said, "I know this story. You've told this to me before." He was adamant that he had not. I then told him that I remember him telling me the answer. Push the tack through the box to hang on the wall and placing the candle in the box. As soon as I said the answer, we were both staring at each other. He does not recall ever seeing this and states that he would remember because the story was really memorable. He has a fairly good memory and no other forgotten memories that we know of. His immediate thought is that it could be a memory he forgot. But even he doesn't fully believe this because his memory is fine. But the alternative is just too strange. I'm convinced that this is some strange glitch, but I wanted to post here and see if anyone has any thoughts. And maybe notable, we've had one other glitch. Last year, I heard him walk up to the door, and I thought that I heard him at the door and I shouted because I was in the kitchen and it was completely quiet, so hearing him at the door startled me. Then, he runs in 10 seconds later and says, "Why did you scream? Are you okay?" But I explained to him that I screamed because I heard him at the door and it startled me. By his recount, he was walking up the stairs to the second flight of stairs when he heard me yell, and then he ran up the rest of the stairs. We live in an apartment with 2 sets of outside stairs. We still don't really know what happened then, but just attributed it to something that we cannot explain. Two outlets in the wall changed on their own by u/rockisrad. This happened yesterday. I'm a part-time college student that lives with my grandma, and her house is fairly old. It was built anywhere between the 50s and the 70s. Most of the outlets in the front section of the house are only two-prong outlets, a neutral and hot opening with no third opening. No ground opening, I think it's called. The back room for the house, which acts as the main living room, is an extension of the house that was built about 15 years ago or so. So those outlets on that side all have three-prong outlets. I've lived with her since 2019 and have always had an extension that connects three prongs to two-prong outlets on the plug for my laptop. Last night, I came home from work and was going to use my laptop, but I noticed that the battery was low, so I went to plug it into the plug right by my bed with an extension. I noticed that the outlet now suddenly had three-prong openings. I was in shock and just stared and wondered if it had always been like that. But I'm near certain it hasn't, because why else would I go out of my way to look for an extension to plug my laptop into that outlet in the past? I even remember losing the extension earlier this year and being unable to plug my laptop in my room because all the outlets only had two-prong openings. I was in disbelief, so I go to my grandma's room to tell her and my mom. My mom was also shocked. She told me that she knows it was only two openings because when she came to bug me one day, she went to plug her phone in my bed and plugged it into my extension cord that had my 3-to-2-prong extension. It's chunky, so you can't miss it. We were talking about it for a little bit, but then went to the kitchen to eat. I wondered if the other outlet under the breakfast nook was still the same, so I went to check. I pulled the chair out and was frozen. The outlet that I knew for a fact had only two-prong openings had changed too. I felt like I was hyperventilating. I didn't know what was going on. I was freaking out and I told my mom to come look at it. And she was equally shocked. She said she tried to plug a big fan in there about 2 months ago, but couldn't because it only has two-prong openings. So she had to move a couch to plug the fan in. For the past 2 years, I have sat in the same chair at the breakfast nook and plugged my laptop in using the prong extension. I remember first moving in here and asking my aunt if she had one of the extensions that I could borrow, since I was unable to plug my laptop in. I asked my grandma if anyone had come by to change just 2 outlets. And no one has, of course. Like, for what purpose? I could barely sleep last night because I kept staring at the outlet by my bed, wondering what the hell had happened to both of them. Where Did the Other Chair Go? By U/Key2062. Last night, to celebrate the 4th of July, my husband and I watched the fireworks from a hotel room at a local casino. After the display, we went down to find some food, enjoyed our pho, then went to find seating somewhere outside to smoke our cigars to cap off the evening. Unlike Vegas, this casino only has one very small outdoor area with slot machines. This area leads to an outdoor space with 3 long benches. He stayed in an area with the slot machines, looking around while I walked outside to find a seat. There were people sitting at each of the benches, and one gentleman in a chair, talking on his phone placed in between one set of benches. I looked down the line to see if there were other chairs, but it was just that one, so we settled for the opposite end of the nearest bench to share with another couple. We are sitting there chatting away, and he says, "I guess he's waiting on his friend to join him." Since we are sitting at the first set of benches and I'm facing him while we are talking, all of the other benches are to my back, so I turned around to see who he was talking about, and it was the guy in the chair. He's still on his phone, and there's an empty seat to the right of him. I thought, "That's odd. How did I miss that other seat?" And shrugged it off, assuming that I just didn't pay close enough attention the first time. I said, "I saw him when I came out and wondered why there aren't more chairs out here." And in that moment I realized it was the chair from the slot machine area. I guess someone just pulled them out of there. So we continue on with our conversation about random things, and after a few minutes, he interrupts himself and says, "Where did the other chair go?" I turn around, and the guy is still sitting there on the phone, alone in the chair. But this time, there's no other chair, and I said, "Oh, wow. Yeah, where did the other chair go?" We are looking around to see if he moved it and discuss was it possible somehow that someone came by and grabbed it and somehow we missed it. There wasn't enough time or space for that to happen and both of us miss it. But we just couldn't come up with another explanation. After a few minutes of us being completely weirded out about this dang missing chair, I go over to the guy and say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but was there another chair here beside you?" He says no, and it's just this one. I look at him like, what the fuck? He wants to know what's going on, and I said that I'll tell him the story when he's off of FaceTime. Another few minutes go by and he gets up to leave and walks by us. We tell him the story, and he looks at us like we are nuts and points at our cigars, shakes his head, laughs, and then walks away. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.